Yes, that's right. It's about that time of year again. The holidays have begun. Thanksgiving is over, and now Christmas is upon us. It's an interesting time to release games because the holiday season is around. In addition to brand new releases, we also have the Steam Winter Sale coming. Between the new releases this month and the Steam Winter Sale, it's a great time to pick up some gifts for not just your family and friends, but also yourself. So here are some games releasing in December and how they may run on the Steam Deck. But before that, if you like this video or any other video I've made on this channel, please like, subscribe, and share with all of your friends. Spreading the gospel of high-tech low-life really helps me in the YouTube algorithm, and it lets the algorithm know that you want more. And while you're at it, why don't you check out my brand new podcast, Off the Console. It's a podcast started by Gardner Bryant, Games Revealed, and I. We talk about games, multimedia, technology, and more. Yes, we have a YouTube channel with full podcast episodes and clips, but we're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to check it out and like and subscribe if you like our podcast. Beat the Humans is a tactical turn-based RPG. It looks pretty fun. There isn't much I can say about the mechanical depth outside of, just playing the game, but hopefully I'll be able to try out this game pretty soon. I have no reason to believe this game won't run well on Steam Deck. That said, the game goes into early access December the 2nd. Anton Blast is a game that I've covered during the Steam Deck Next Fest, and yes, the demo ran super well on Steam Deck. But even if there wasn't a demo to try out on the Steam Deck, there'd be no doubt that this game would run super well on the Steam Deck. I will say, the game is quite fun and you can get into it quite easily casually, but there's a pretty high skill ceiling, so if you want to truly master the levels, you can. It's very much a Wario Land type game, kind of like what Pizza Tower is. When it comes to platformers, there is just pure joy out of playing this game. It feels great to play, and even if you do fail, it's always great to just go back and learn from your mistakes. Anton Blast was originally supposed to be released in November, but due to the hurricane they had to delay the game. And now the game hopefully will come out on December the 3rd. Diesel Legacy is a fighting game that features 3 different lanes of play. It also features simultaneous 2v2 fighting, which means that yes, it's a 4-player simultaneous fighting game. If I had to make a true fighting game comparison, it'd be like a mixture of Guilty Gear Isuka and Real Bout Fatal Fury. I will say that that's more of a surface level assessment as opposed to an actual gameplay evaluation. Now, this isn't the first fighting game featuring simultaneous team dynamics, but this is the first one that's explicitly designed that way, as opposed to like an extra mode like Dramatic Battle from the Street Fighter Alpha series. So I am curious as to how this actually shakes out in practice. Could it be Evo material? Maybe, but we won't see till the game fully releases and people play it. I do want to try this game out. I'm sure this game runs quite well on Steam Deck. This game also releases on December the 3rd. The Edge of Allegoria is a classic style turn-based RPG, very reminiscent of something like the old Pokemon games, of course. Its main selling point is that it's not a kid's game, and I don't know what that means in the grand scheme of things, because it's certainly not one of those one-handed games. That said, I'm not entirely sure what this game does differently from, say, most other RPGs, but it does seem interesting enough. The game looks like it was made for a Game Boy, featuring the sort of like greenish aesthetic that the old Game Boy had. I have literally no reason to believe that this game wouldn't run well on Steam Deck at all. The Edge of Allegoria releases on December the 4th. Delta Force is the type of game that I would have assumed wouldn't run well on Steam Deck at all. It's a massive first-person shooter that looks pretty graphically demanding, if I do say so myself. Except I've seen footage of the demo running quite well on Steam Deck. Here's something interesting as well. The demo lets you play on the Steam Deck, but it only whitelisted the Steam Deck LCD, whereas the Steam Deck OLED was not whitelisted at all. That said, that was just the demo, so hopefully they'll let OLED players play with LCD players, because, the OLED is just straight up better, okay? It was also the most played demo on the Steam Deck Next Fest, and it's one that I really should have covered. It's supposed to feature 3 main modes: the extraction shooter mode, the massive multiplayer, and the Black Hawk Down campaign. Based on demo footage, it seems like the game ran quite well on Steam Deck, though hopefully they'll fix the issue with the Steam Deck OLED not working, whereas the LCD does. This game also releases on December the 4th. Fantasian was considered to be one of the best games on Apple Arcade, and it's no longer shackled to that stupid platform. Now you can buy it and own it on a wide variety of different systems, yes, including PC. From what I understand, it's the same game you could play on Apple Arcade, but with some nice oddities such as fully voiced cutscenes, as well as 4K support and a brand new, easier difficulty. I've heard a lot about how great this game is on an iPhone, but you know, I don't have an iPhone, and I don't want to buy an iPhone just for a JRPG, you know? And it was also locked behind an Apple Arcade subscription as well, so now we can play this game on our Steam Decks, and we only have to pay once. This game will probably run quite well on Steam Deck. I mean, it was on a phone, right? It should run well, right? Fantasian Neo Dimension releases on December the 5th. Overthrown makes you build bases, but it also pairs that with extremely fast gameplay. You feel insanely fast in this game. It's unreal. I've actually covered this game as part of the Steam Next Fest. I've played the demo on the Steam Deck and the demo ran pretty well. Also, the speed at which you run in the game is exhilarating. It's the most fun you can have, to be honest. You can also pick up gigantic trees and throw them at your enemies or throw them into your logging facilities, and they just process, which is great. This game releases on December the 5th. Caves of Qud is a science fantasy turn-based roguelike, traditional roguelike. Technically, you've been able to buy this game since 2015, but the 1.0 release is around the corner. Yes, as expected, this game runs great on Steam Deck, and many people claim that this is the only way they play Caves of Qud now. And yes, despite being in early access, the game is Steam Deck verified. Yes, you can buy the game right now, but the 1.0 update drops on December the 5th. I play a lot of number simulators like Diablo and Disgaea, but man, Path of Exile is a lot. One of the cool things about Path of Exile is that it runs great on the Steam Deck. Originally, Path of Exile 2 was going to be like Overwatch 2, where it's basically just a big update and not a real sequel, but now it's a real sequel. While the game may look better and more graphically intense, the developers have committed to keeping this game running well on Steam Deck. And from the Path of Exile community, it seems like the developers can in fact be trusted. I've dipped my toes in the PoE time and time again for a little bit, and to be honest, it is a lot, but one of these days I'll give it a fair shake. One of these days I'll give it the 40 or 50,000 hours I need to really play the game. While Path of Exile's Steam page says December 2024 as if there's no specific date, the developers have said that Path of Exile 2 will be released on December the 6th. Also, all microtransactions from Path of Exile 1 will be transferable too. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is set between Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, making a sort of lost sequel between the two. Like if Temple of Doom wasn't a prequel, this is slated to be one of the big releases of the year. Now, to be honest, a lot of people, including myself, thought this would be kind of like just Uncharted, but you know, Indiana Jones. But the gameplay looks quite different. People are saying it's almost like a sort of immersive sim, and honestly, if that's the case, I'm on board. Yes, while the game takes place in the first person, and yes, Indiana Jones does carry a gun sometimes, it's not really an FPS, which I think is a pretty good thing. While I am inclined to believe that this game won't run that well on Steam Deck, there are reports suggesting that this game runs on id Tech, and if that's the case, then the game might have a chance of running well on Steam Deck. But to be fair though, all the last id Tech games were last gen, so there's no telling if this generation of id Tech will run that well on Steam Deck. But I am hopeful. Maybe it'll run at like 30 FPS, I don't know. What I do know is that this game will also release on December the 8th. Paper Perjury gives off Ace Attorney vibes, and probably because both have to do with the law. Of course, rather than being a lawyer, you're instead a clerk for a police department. You help solve crimes, find evidence, and do a bunch of investigative work. As a story-based game, the entire game hinges on how good the story is, how well it's written, and you know, the characters. As for performance though, I mean, come on man. It's gonna run well on Steam Deck, I am like 1000% certain. The game also has full controller support as well. Paper Perjury releases on December the 9th. Bat to the Heavens is a puzzle platformer that requires you to use your bat to move around. In this game, you can't jump, but you can use your bat to make you ascend to the heavens, so to speak. Platformers that take away basic features like the jumping mechanic seems like an interesting concept to explore, and it's one that will really live and die by how good the bat controls are. One thing you shouldn't have to worry about, of course, is the performance. I have no reason to believe that this game won't run well on Steam Deck. This game releases on December the 9th. Cell Zero is supposed to be a sci-fi horror visual novel. That said, the trailer doesn't really sell me on the idea that this is supposed to be psychological horror in any way. But of course, you know, they're probably saving the good stuff for when you actually buy the game, right? There aren't too many visual novels outside of Japan that I really like the art style for, but I do like the art for this one, so maybe I'll give it a shot. It's a visual novel, it's gonna run well on the Steam Deck, and even that performance isn't a huge consideration. I mean, it's a visual novel. Cell Zero releases on December the 10th. To be honest, I've never played any of the Legacy of Kain games, but apparently many people on the internet were raving about Soul Reaver 1 and 2 getting remasters. Makes me wonder, what am I missing? Tell me in the comments down below. But anyways, you get the first and second game remastered. As for whether or not this game will run well on Steam Deck, I have no reason to believe that it wouldn't. I mean, Aspyr has generally done a pretty good job of getting their remasters working quite well on Steam Deck. So I would say this game, you know, being a remaster of an older game is a pretty safe bet for running well on Steam Deck. Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered releases on December the 10th. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Ritas Rewind is a beat 'em up that's up to 5 players, 1 per ranger, obviously. You know the Japanese version of Power Rangers, you know, the Super Sentai? The Yellow Ranger's actually a dude. Anyways, it seems like fun, mindless, quarter-munching action for you and up to 4 other friends. Also worth mentioning is that while the trailer doesn't show the Green Ranger at all, the Green Ranger is also apparently playable as well. And this is apparently based on Season 1, so there is no White Ranger. Not yet, at least. And yes, there's no reason to believe this game won't run well on Steam Deck. And it releases on December the 10th. Meide is an unusual one. It gives off very cutesy vibes, but obviously, as you know, underneath all of this cutesy stuff is some truly heinous stuff. Some truly deep psychological horror. At least, that's what the game advertises. But will the game maintain longevity outside of shock value? Who knows? What I do like are that all of the chores are like their own individual mini-games. I have zero doubts that this game won't run well on Steam Deck at all. I do find this trend of like a reverse Yandere simulator to be interesting because, well, it almost plays a sort of psychological horror survival horror aspect. Meide releases on December the 10th. You know, this is like the second time I've featured a Hiro Mashima game in here. This is, of course, Fairy Tail 2. In fact, this game is based on the final arc of the manga series, the Alvarez arc. Now, to be honest, I didn't watch Fairy Tail. That was something more my brother watched. You know, the original Fairy Tail JRPG ran quite well on Steam Deck, but you did need to install Proton GE to get it up and running at all. Reports still suggest that you need Proton GE to run the original game anyways, which is why the game is still marked as Steam Deck unsupported. I have no reason to believe that this game won't run well on Steam Deck, but given how the original game still doesn't technically run on Steam Deck without any modifications, there's a good chance that this game might not run out of the box either, at least without Proton GE. Hopefully Koei Tecmo can fix that. This game releases on December the 11th. Heat Death Survival Train reminds me of Snowpiercer. It's basically that, a survival game on a train. Of course, unlike Snowpiercer, you won't have terrible moral dilemmas such as a caste system, and stealing children from the lower caste to replace gears on a train. Part of me believes that this game will run well on Steam Deck, at least early game and mid game well. End game though may be a different story. This game releases on December the 12th. Also releasing on December the 12th is Spirit of the Samurai. Spirit of the Samurai had a demo during the Steam Next Fest, and the demo ran quite well, especially if you wanted to play this on the Steam Deck. Spirit of the Samurai is a 2D action game that's described as having Metroidvania aspects. What those actually are, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it is a full-on Metroidvania, or maybe it's something else entirely. The game looks interesting. It's got this sort of photorealistic art style mixed with what looks like stop motion. In fact, it might actually be stop motion. The mix of stop motion and realistic looking animations, you know what that kind of reminds me of? Like the old Mortal Kombat games with the digitized actors? Yeah, it reminds me of that. Kletka gives off Lethal Company vibes. Your goal is to descend while going down an elevator that's trying to eat you. Exploring floors will help you try to find things to feed your elevator while you descend further into madness. I think someone described this game as having Lethal Company vibes but in Eastern Europe, and it kinda makes sense to be honest. It looks like it'll run quite well on Steam Deck, though your best bet would be to, hopefully, get 4 friends to play with you. because these sorts of games are practically unplayable alone. This game releases on December the 12th. Neat 2 Absolute Zero is a boomer shooter. In its base form, it is pretty fun, but I really couldn't tell you what makes this different compared to every other boomer shooter I've played. Thankfully though, there's a demo out, and we can see what the game is all about, and the demo, in my opinion, runs pretty well on Steam Deck. This game releases on December the 13th. The Cabin Factory has you investigating multiple different cabins to see which ones are haunted and which ones aren't. It's described as a psychological horror walking simulator, almost like the infamous Silent Hill PT. Remember that? Also worth mentioning, horror games are a little more low-key than most other game titles, and as such, they tend to run better, probably because there isn't too much going on. The Cabin Factory releases on December the 13th. The Midnight Crimes is a point-and-click detective game where your job is to solve crimes. A retired private detective facing your own demons while looking for this missing child. As a point-and-click game, you have to go through the arduous task of finding clues yourself. And for some, that is enjoyable. For others, it may not be enjoyable, but the cool thing is that this game probably runs well on Steam Deck, and you can use the trackpads to point and click. Eh? Sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? It's your job to piece the clues together and to fit the evidence together to see what it all means. And yes, your choices matter. Dive in on December the 20th. You are this guy, a guy so jacked you can punch skeletons to death. This right here is a 2D Souls-like / Metroidvania. The game is definitely leaning on this idea that you're this incredibly jacked MMA fighter that's been transported into the past. As for whether or not this game will be good, I mean, I'm willing to give it a shot. It could be good, or it could just be a funny little game here and there. Crude releases on December the 22nd. Now we've covered every game that's releasing in December with an actual date. Now we're going to talk about the games that are supposed to be releasing in December 2024. Or maybe just 2024 in general, because after all, this is the last stretch. Starting of course with Streets of Rogue 2. I've actually covered this game before. It was supposed to be released about 2 months ago, but it was delayed due to unknown reasons. There is a demo available. I've tried the demo out on Steam Deck, and yes, the demo runs quite well, and I've had fun too. As it stands right now, there is no official release date. All we know is the game is supposed to be releasing by the end of this year. Abyss Fantasia is a game that I might not fully understand just from watching gameplay of it, but it does have some pretty great aesthetics. It's almost got this sort of fantasy pop-up book art style, and it looks great. That said, I'm not entirely sure what sort of game this is, but I've seen some combat, and the combat revolves around some cards. Though I'm not really sure if it's like a card-based game like, I don't know, most other games, or if the cards are just an aesthetic choice. Whatever the case is, I want to give this game a fair shake. You know, this is like the second game about yandares trying to kill you that I've covered today, and maybe it's a sign. Anyways, AI2U is a game where you have to escape these yandere girls, but they really want to keep you in. They'd rather you die than you run away. I've actually covered the demo during the Steam Next Fest. Essentially, you're snooping around her room to find clues and whatnot about what happened and why you're here and how to escape. But what makes this game truly unique is that you can actually converse with her via typing or with voice, and the AI responds to you in kind. And yes, it's powered by AI. I spent a lot of my demo playtime just profusely apologizing, which is kind of crazy to be honest. Anyways, the demo ran quite well on Steam Deck, and like the rest of the games in this section, there is no official release date. All we know for certain is that it's supposed to be releasing sometime this year. You know, the end of this year, of course. Endless Alice is a 3D action roguelike. You know, Endless Alice reminds me of a specific game. Does it remind you of Genshin Impact? Maybe. What it actually reminds me of? Risk of Rain 2. No, like look at the UI. It's pretty darn similar to what Risk of Rain 2 has, you know, except for the giant minimap. Risk of Rain 2 doesn't have that, but whatever. It does look kind of interesting as a Risk of Rain 2 clone, but like, I can't unsee Risk of Rain 2, so it makes me wonder if maybe I'll just play that instead. I'm sure this will run well on Steam Deck, just like Risk of Rain 2 does. At least up to a certain point. Once you start breaking the game with multiple different upgrades, then I'm sure the game's gonna lag like crazy. Just like Risk of Rain 2. Dual Corp is a Souls-like that I've actually beta tested, and it runs quite well on Steam Deck. One of the things I liked about the game when I beta tested it was the directional based combat. You can attack from above, left, or right, and you have to block from those directions as well. The full game is also supposed to have procedurally generated worlds. I don't know how that shakes out in practice, given that one of the main highlights of the Souls-like genre are the levels, but who knows. I enjoyed my time with the beta, and I think now it's time for me to dive into the full game to see what's fully changed, because it's been a while since I've beta tested this. Kingmakers is that one game that became viral because you basically isekai into a fantasy world. You travel back in time with your pickup truck and your weapons of choice. Your shotgun, your pistols, all sorts of guns that, you know, these poor knights can't stand up to. The concept makes it seem like a meme game, and it may certainly well be. But given how big the battles look, there's a good chance that this game might actually be something beyond just a meme game. It might be like Mountain Blade, but with guns. Wouldn't that be cool? As much as I'd like to think that this game would run well on the Steam Deck, look at how many characters there are. Look how many knights in battle there are. There's a good chance that this game probably won't run well on Steam Deck. At least until you start killing more and more enemies. That's right. The more you kill, the better your Steam Deck performs, probably. Am I right, fellas? So I do hope this game runs well on Steam Deck. I really do. But there's a solid chance that it just won't. Baby Steps is another Bennett Foddy game, where your job is to learn how to walk. It's almost like a 3D version of Corp, if you will. Remember that game? Yeah, that game was pretty funny. The walking is physics-based, which automatically makes for a great experience because it's so funny. As for whether or not this game will run on Steam Deck, I mean, I think it'll run well on Steam Deck. It just depends on how intense the physics are. God, you know, Bennett Foddy is an interesting fellow. He makes a lot of games that are very avant-garde, very unique, and most importantly, no one's ever replicated his games except for that one, you know, Getting Over It. How do I even pronounce the name of this game? Is it Zeres? Exile? I'm not sure. I think I've seen this game before though, on Twitter. You've got your melee options and your guns. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure if it's a Metroidvania or not, but the game looks quite fun regardless. It also gives off a sort of run and gun vibe as well, almost like a Contra, but as a Metroidvania? That actually sounds kind of sick. While the game may look graphically intense, all of the graphics are pre-rendered, and so the game should run quite well on Steam Deck, or at least I think it should. That said, there is a demo available, and I will try it out after I publish this video. Code Bunny is a 2D platformer that gives off Mega Man vibes. Well, Mega Man and Sonic vibes, if that makes sense. You've actually been able to buy this on itch.io, but it is coming to Steam in December, so I'm including it here. The game's a lot of fun, and it's got a pretty high skill ceiling, and yes, this game ran quite well on Steam Deck, even the itch.io version, that is. It's not a big surprise that this game runs well on Steam Deck, but it's always worth mentioning. While Code Bunny's official Steam page says it's coming soon with no official date, the developer has confirmed to me that yes, this is coming out in December of this year. Yeah, that means anywhere between December the 1st and December the 31st. Now let's talk about games that I don't think will run well on Steam Deck, or games that I don't think will work on Steam Deck at all. Marvel Rivals is like Overwatch, but potentially good. Now, the game looks like it'll run well on Steam Deck, but the big problem is that, well, it's a competitive multiplayer game with an anti-cheat, so there's no guarantee that the developers will let this game run on Steam Deck at all. Some people have tried the closed beta on the Steam Deck, and no, that didn't work on Steam Deck. Now, that's no guarantee that this game won't work on Steam Deck, but it's a pretty clear indicator that you probably shouldn't expect this game to run on Steam Deck, which kinda sucks because this game looks super fun. Marvel Rivals releases on December the 5th, but it's not gonna be playable on Steam Deck, at least until something changes. Ark II doesn't have a definitive release date outside of 2024, but to be honest, I have no reason to believe this game will run well on Steam Deck. I mean, the first Ark was a horribly unoptimized mess, and it still kind of is. There's no way Ark 2 is going to run any better on the Steam Deck, and given Ark's reputation for being quite unoptimized even on high-end PCs, there's no guarantee that my own gaming PC will even run this at a decent frame rate. I'm mostly talking about this game because there will be some interest in this game, even if it's not from me. Some madman's going to try to get this working on the Steam Deck at a playable 30 FPS, or even less, but personally, I think it's going to be a fruitless endeavor, but I would love to be proven wrong. So this one was a bit of an interesting video because, well, there weren't that many games that had official release dates in December. Many of the games I've covered have release dates that are somewhere in 2024. But given 2024 is about to release, we're either going to see these games released sometime in December, or perhaps they won't be released in December and they'll be delayed to 2025 or whatever. This is not every game that's supposed to be releasing sometime in December. This is every game that I found that was interesting that would be released in December. That or notable releases. Now, I gotta ask you a question. Do you guys enjoy these videos? Because I've been working on these monthly videos since like the beginning of this year. This month is also a very interesting time to release a video like this because more often than not, you'll probably buy games that are on sale instead. And to be honest, I probably will too. There's no shame in waiting for a game to go on sale because you'll buy a game that's cheaper, and if the game is especially buggy, you'll buy a version of a game that's been patched already. Like, you know, Stalker 2 released, and it seems like it's a pretty cool game, but it is kind of buggy at the moment, and I'm gonna exercise my right to buy the game later when the game is a little bit more patched. But remember this, no one can tell you what to buy except for yourself, and that's your decision to make, okay? If you like this video, please press the like button and check out our other videos, and if you like those other videos as well, be sure to press the subscribe button and share the good gospel of high-tech lowlife with your friends. Furthermore, we have a community Discord for enlightened individuals such as you. And if you wish to further support high-tech lowlife, be sure to check out our Patreon page. Links in the description.